That's a three-bladed ramp right there.
Yeah, what does that mean?
That's a she ramp, they call it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
They didn't need them, but you can. There ain't nothing wrong with them.
Huh. Oh, wow, look at those. When did you set these out, Dad?
Back about in the 80s, I guess.
Oh, these.
Well, actually, now, wait a minute. I don't think we set these out. I think they just jumped the fence road down there. They jumped the creek somehow or other.
Really? So they do spread?
Yeah, oh yeah. But I mean, I might have set them out, but it had been 30, 40 years ago.
How long have you been eating ramps?
Ever since I was in school up here at Boston, and that's back in the 40s.
In the 40s?
Yeah, back in the 40s. They got so thick over here one time, and it's not good for them to be thick. It's just like them up there.
Yeah.
See, they was too thick.
Yeah, that'll take me a while to...
Now, how many you need?
Just a few to put in with some potatoes. More than that. Hi everyone, I am excited to be back and I'm just going to share a few things that we've been doing around the homestead this spring. Digging ramps with my daddy is always something I look forward to because he has nurtured and cultivated his ramp patches here on this property for years. And we are very protective of them. We only take a few each spring and he will occasionally move some around so they start growing in different places. Ramps are sometimes thought of as leeks or wild garlic, but it's kind of its own thing. And ramps are one of our most prized foraged foods here in Appalachia. People have been eating them for generations, and old-timers call them a spring tonic. Foraging ramps is a big deal here in the mountains. There are ramp conventions and festivals where people come together to enjoy music, food, and just celebrating mountain culture. They can be cooked really any way that you would cook onions, so I like to roast them with potatoes, but they're also great in scrambled eggs, meatloaf, they're great deep fried, and just about any way that you would use onions. I especially love them roasted, so I'm roasting these with some of our potatoes. I drizzled in some olive oil, then I added garlic powder, chili powder, onion powder, paprika, parsley, and sea salt. And you can add whatever spices or herbs you would like. I roasted these in the oven at 400 degrees for about 40 minutes, and I did turn these over about halfway through. They're so good. I decided to fry some of my ramps in cabbage with smoked sausage to make a meal out of it, and I also fried some cornbread. This is a wonderfully hearty Appalachian meal for sure. Another thing I've been doing is playing around with the sourdough bread. Now, my husband and I really don't eat much bread. I love bread. We love bread a lot. And I do make an easy but delicious whole wheat sandwich bread we love, but we really have to eat low carb most of the time. So bread is kind of a special thing we have occasionally, although our son eats a fair amount. So I actually made a starter and made a nice whole wheat artisan loaf about 5 years ago. But the method I used was really complicated and it took way too much time. Plus, there was a lot of waste with the discard, and I just didn't feel like it was something I wanted to do. And also, my mother makes wonderful bread and she keeps our son supplied with homemade bread, so I just wasn't interested in that process. For some reason, though, I decided to try again, and I made my starter with whole wheat flour, and I only started with about a 1/4 cup of flour and a 1/4 cup water. I just added about the same amount the next day, and on the third day, I took a little bit out and fed it again. But from then on, I didn't go by schedule, which is perfect for someone like me. I just kind of looked at it and fed it if I thought it needed to be fed, and I might have discarded twice in 2 weeks. I just wanted to make sure it was bubbly and doubling until it was ready to use. Y'all, I searched and searched for an easy recipe for sourdough sandwich bread. I don't like crusty hard bread that you need a chainsaw to cut into, and I don't like the inside to be so chewy that it pulls the crowns off my teeth. I also didn't want to weigh anything. I don't even have a digital scale. I just felt like if this is something that the great-great-great-grandmothers did, they did not have any of these gadgets, but they made great bread, so I felt there had to be a way to simplify it. I tried several different recipes and I kept tweaking until I found something that worked for me. Now, I feel like what works for me might not work for someone else because this is definitely a feel kind of process. So I'll share my recipe that I use, then I'll also link to some other recipes that would be a great starting point if you, also like me, want something that's not overcomplicated. This particular recipe is basically warm water with the starter dissolved into that, and I add olive oil, honey, a little sea salt, and then my flour. I've been using mostly bread flour, and I'll occasionally exchange a cup of the bread flour for whole wheat flour, but because I feed my starter with rye, this particular combination just makes a really nice rustic tasting loaf of bread that we love. As far as the starter, I started with whole wheat flour, but now I feed it with rye flour. I'll leave it in the fridge, and when I'm ready to bake, I take it out of the fridge the night before, set it on the counter, and let it acclimate. Then I feed it about a third cup of rye flour and about a third cup of water. It's always bubbly and more than doubled by the next morning. I use about half of that in the recipe, then I don't feed it at all. I just put the lid on, put it back in the fridge until I'm ready to bake again. This particular recipe is basically 4 stretches and folds every 30 minutes, then it proofs for 6 hours. I put it in my oven with a plate on top. Now, sometimes I turn on the bread proof setting, which is about 95 degrees, I think, just depending on how cold our house is. After 6 hours, I shape it into a loaf and let it rise in the oven for about 2 hours or until it's above the side of the pan. It bakes for about 35 minutes at 375. I will link my recipe below, and also I'll link to some other videos that really helped me realize this process is not as complicated as people make it. I'm not a baker, y'all, and I don't pretend to be any kind of great cook, so if I can make this bread, then definitely anyone can. So I would love to know if you're like me and you just want to make a good loaf of sourdough, but you want something that's not overly complicated. If you have an easy recipe or method you love, be sure to share that with me below in the comments. so easy. It's something I can start on Friday night by getting my starter out of the fridge and feeding it so it's ready to go the next day. I mix everything up in the morning so by evening it's ready for the oven. I think every loaf just gets better and better, and for somebody who needs to be on a low-carb diet, that's probably not a good thing, but I just feel like I've accomplished something that I wasn't sure I could actually do. And that, my friends, is a wonderful feeling. So if I can do it, you can do it.